If, like me, you are a huge fan of the SL platform, and I really am, you could be asking yourself, just what is it about these cars that makes them so sought after, held in such high regard by so many? And I think if you're into cars in any way, shape or form, it is impossible to ignore the wonderful Mercedes SL in all its guises over all the years. I've owned this car now for coming up to about 6 months. Time really flies, and the ownership experience has been an absolute joy. It sparks off a lot of conversation at the pumps. I really take pride in looking after it. I enjoy looking after this car. And there is a lot to discuss about why these cars are so sought after. This one for me, the SL55 in particular, I've always loved them. I've always loved the SL, but for me it was the SL55 that really pushed its head above all the others to stand out as the ultimate SL for me, and it still does, even considering that almighty all-hallowed W198 from 1954, the 300 SL Gullwing. But it's millions one of those. It's not something I'm ever going to achieve, I don't think, unless I get very lucky. And even then, I would probably be so concerned about potentially causing any damage to it. I think it would just have to sit there in the garage, right, doing nothing, or in a museum, because it's still one of the most beautiful cars ever made by a country mile. Absolutely stunning cars. But this here, the SL55, is hugely affordable right now. Really affordable. And we're going to be looking at why they're so sought after in this video. And please, if you have owned one, or you do own one, or you would like to own one, I would love to hear in the comments just why you think these cars are so special. And they really do hold a place in a lot of people's hearts as one of the ultimate SLs. And we got to kind of go back really to when these things were released in 2002, which is 22 years ago now. This car, 21 years young. And of course, I do remember at the time watching F1, back when F1 used to be exciting. I actually prefer watching Drive to Survive right now on Netflix than I do actual Formula One. Is that bad of me? But this car was a safety car in the era of V10 F1 cars. And I always remember the high-pitched squeal of those cars flying around the track. When this thing was out, you could still hear it beneath all those F1 cars because of that exhaust note. Not particularly loud, not particularly gruesome. It is a beautiful thing. It is deep, it is warm, it is rich, and for me it is one of the best features of this car, and one of the main reasons why I adore them so much. I do call out that what surprised me so much getting into this car after having never driven one until 6 months ago, never been in one, was just how lazy an experience it is. It is oh so lazy, but good lazy. Such good lazy. It is just a wonderful thing to drive, a wonderful thing to behold, and a wonderful thing to be in. And I think the whole package, the way it looks, even today, not particularly dated, I think. I still think it looks brilliant, actually. Very nice, very good looking car. Just the entire package though, the fact that it's 2 doors, the fact that it's got a hard top, the right wheels, the right colour on this car as well, just kind of brings together this wonderful package that sits in front of you and gets you excited about wanting to get in it and wanting to go for a drive. Now, what was the kind of competition that this thing might have been up against in 2002? Well, I would say that crazy mega performance cars were very few and far between back in the day. I mean, we're sport rotten now with bonkers BHP figures across the board, right? But back in the day, the primary cars kind of in the same league as this. So you had this, you might have had the Porsche 911 Turbo, you might have had the Aston Martin DB9, and of course the Ferrari 360, which was out and about at the same time as this. This car back in the day was, I think, list £88,000, which in today's money is about 150k. So it was very expensive. The 360, I think that was about 105k back in the day when it launched, which in today's money is about 180. And Ferraris these days have just kind of kept increasing, I think, out of parity with everything else. The list prices now for Ferraris is absolutely bonkers, whereas this has kind of stayed true to the original list price given inflation. The 360, I think, was 4.5 seconds to 60. This was 4.6. This, at the time, was the fastest automatic car in the world at launch. It was absolutely ballistic in terms of its speed. You had, of course, the Porsche 911 Turbo. That was available in auto/Tiptronic, and that wasn't as quick as this. This was ballistically quick at the time, and I think it just got so many people excited. A, because it's an SL and the SL legacy just goes on, and B, because of the way it delivered its brutal hammer-like power as you progress down the road. It's just a wonderful thing, and even today it is still a wonderful thing. So you had this, you had the 360, you had that DB9, which is a V12, right? All wonderful cars, but I don't see as many of those on the road today as I do these. These are all still going strong, and that is one of the great things, and also one of the bad things about this car was the over-engineering of this car, and it has been over-engineered to death without doubt, which is great, but also not great when it comes to maintenance. We'll get on to costs today and maintenance in a little bit, but for me, back in the day, this car won above all those other cars, and the 996 today, people look at that and wince. It has not aged well. Grab yourself a 996 bargain if you want one, but these, I look at one now and I still think, yes, that is a great looking car. 360, I look at that now and I think, I don't think it's aged very well, and I've said that before. I really don't think it has. The DB9 still looks lovely, still fantastic looking car. But today, these cars are hideously cheap. A lot cheaper than all those other cars I've mentioned. Why? Why are they so cheap? Why are they such a bargain compared to others? For example, a 360 now, a good one, it's going to be mid to high 70s for a good one, I think. You might get a more dog-eared, low-spec one a bit cheaper, but they're expensive. Now, these things are very cheap these days. Almost, dare I say it, embarrassingly cheap. You can get one, probably one that's going to need a lot of TLC and a bit of investment from yourself, for between about £10,000 and £15,000. You can probably find a relatively good one for that, and that represents significant bang for buck over a 360 that's going to set you off over 70 just to get in one, right? But that is quite a surprise, I think, to get one of these cars for that sum of money. Now, they do go up to over 30, and those tend to be cars with the F1 pack. Now, what was the F1 pack? Well, the F1 pack had some upgrades to cooling, had some upgrades to the brakes. You had the SL55 front bumper, but I personally wouldn't be necessarily getting one of those. I think just a standard SL55 is going to do you more than enough, unless you want one that might be a bit more collectible going forward. But you can get one very cheap indeed, really very cheap, kind of surprisingly cheap. Now, why is that? Well, it's because of the reputation that these things have from a maintenance perspective, and it is not generally what I would say a positive experience. Now, the owners clubs and forums behind these cars are brilliant, hugely helpful. People looking after these cars, trying to preserve the memories, keep the dream alive, as I say, right? But they are not known for being cheap to run. Now, so far, this car to me has been a beautifully kind thing. It's been wonderful. It's been really fair. It hasn't thrown up any horrible surprises. I am braced for those to happen, but right now it's done very well indeed. Now, here is the thing with this car. You see a lot of people on forums bemoaning how much it costs to run. There's always something going on, always something that needs doing. And yes, that kind of is the case, but if you're not ready for that, if you're not willing for that, if you're not ready to accept that, and if it's going to make you sad, don't get one. Do not get one of these cars. They are generally pretty demanding. Now, one thing that people do, I've talked about this before, is they convert these cars away from the ABC, active body control system, to coilovers. So if you want one that is going to be potentially a little bit better for you to run, then get one that has already been converted to coilovers. But consider that, because, for example, you won't be able to jack the car up. I need to jack the car up. But this is one of the reasons why they might not be so sought after, is the running costs and that ABC. Now, will this car ever be a future classic? Now, if you look at values recently, I think they have started to go back up. People are looking at these now and thinking, do you know what? That is a very, very lovely car, and one I would potentially quite like to get into or explore. So I do want to advise, be careful if you're buying one. Make sure that you get one with a good provenance. This one I bought off a car enthusiast, so you just knew it was going to be well looked after, and it's just simply a wonderful, wonderful car. It's pretty much back to showroom. There's a few bits that we need to do, but absolutely phenomenal car. So, why are these cars so sought after? This is why they're so sought after. That's all you need to do in this car to realise why they are so sought after. Gently put your foot down and go forward. It's not particularly fast by today's standard, but they just build and build speed. Torque is beautiful. And it just keeps going until you have to watch your speed a little bit. Now, one area that was a bit of a surprise to me, I think, is the brakes. Let's get these back up. The brakes for me they don't have great feel. Obviously it's the SBC, which SBC is warranted, I think, for 25 years from Mercedes now, because it's a failure point in the car. You don't want your brakes to fail, as that would be a pretty bad thing. That was one area that was a bit of a surprise to me, is the brakes, and for me they were a bit kind of, could have been a bit better, but overall absolutely wonderful, wonderful car. They're sought after because they deserve to be sought after. Just take a look at one, take one out for a drive, and this is why they are so sought after. They're just wonderful, wonderful cars with such great provenance and such a thrill to drive, and that's all you need. That is it for this one. Do stay safe, stay well. See you on the next one, and bye for now.